guys, I'm so happy to have you here back. Today we're meeting at my kitchen table. It's a new setting, obviously. The light probably will change with how the daylight goes, but I'm happy to start a new series today. I chose to call this series Restored. I will explain in the last video, the 10th episode, why I chose this name. But in the meantime, today I want to share with you guys my story, and then starting from today, in the next 9 weeks, we're gonna go through a journey with me, if you will, and develop and discuss about different bits and pieces from my story that might be similar to your story. Today we're gonna talk a little bit about my story, but then kind of indirectly or directly, however you wanna call it, we're gonna talk about scars. As you see my t-shirt, it says, "Turn your scars into stars." And we're gonna talk a little about some of my scars from my life. What does the word scar mean? Scar, it's a trace left by a healed wound. Having a scar implies the fact that you had a wound and that there was the process of healing that took place. But before I wanna dive more into the subject, I'm gonna start sharing my story. And yeah, I'll start it in a very traditional way, if you will. I was born in a village in the west of Romania. As my brother Danny has the habit of saying, the most beautiful place on earth. I'm not sure if it's the most beautiful place on earth, but definitely I grew up in an amazing family, and I consider myself the most blessed because I grew up in the family that I grew up. I grew up in a family that is formed of my mom, my dad, my 2 brothers, my sister, myself, and an auntie up to a certain age. I grew up in a family where God was the central piece. My parents modeled a very authentic relationship with God. And every time I think about my relationship with God, I consider that I started it very early in life, and it kind of just progressed naturally, and it grew naturally, and it matured naturally with how I matured as a person, as a child, as a teenager, as a woman. But it was a very natural journey, if you will, in my relationship with God. I got baptized when I was 15. It was the age where it was considered I was mature enough, but for me personally, the baptism wasn't the moment of my conversion, or I don't even know if I necessarily had a moment of conversion as much as it was just a natural development. And then when I was 15, it was just considered I was mature enough to make this decision, to take this decision, and I got baptized. It's true that the baptism made me more responsible. It was a way that as when you get married and you have the wedding ring put on your finger, and now obviously if anybody sees my hand walking around wherever, they know that I am married, that I am taken, that I belong to somebody. It's the same with how I view my baptism. I told everybody that I belong to Christ, that I want to follow him, and that I'm his. In some ways, I had a very linear, if you will, journey and life, and through some aspects, that's very true. But you see, although I had a very linear life, childhood, good life, good childhood, the devil tried in different ways to kind of put obstacles my way. The first obstacle was of me not being born. I was born at almost 10 months old, which is not normal. Obviously, if you know anything, a child is supposed to be born at 9 months of pregnancy. I was born at 10 months. Another time I might tell you the story, but just saying it super short. The doctors did not know if my mom would make it, if I will make it, if I was going to be born alive, if I was going to be born well with no problems, if my mom was going to be alright. It was during the time of communism still, and the technology, the medicine, and just everything that had to do with the health system was not well train, or they didn't have the equipment. C-sections were not very common those days, so it was just more or less left to God, really. But I was born healthy, although I was very purple when I was born, and some other few bits and pieces, but my mom was well, I was well. It was basically a miraculous birth. But the devil did try to stop it from happening, and I'm not more special than you are. I'm nothing more amazing or whatever than you are, because at the end of the day, the devil is trying to stop every life from being born. That's why we have so many abortions, because the devil does not want that child to be born. He cannot touch God, but he tries to hurt God by hurting. But I was born well, and my life developed okay. But we do live in a world where people have a free choice. We have a free choice of bringing life with us or bringing death. We are always facing with these two decisions. Are we going to listen to God and the plan that God has, or are we going to listen to the devil? Again, the devil tried to make me doubt God, make me maybe not have a relationship with God, or all the other aftermath of what happened to me as a child. Unfortunately, from the age of about 3, 4 until about the age of 10 or 11, I was sexually molested by a man from our village. Sadly, he was part of the church as well. And yeah, that abuse took place and lasted. It happened quite a lot of times during this period of years. Now, if you know me, it might be a bit of a shock and you might have some questions in your mind popping up, so I'll try and answer some of those. First of all, I want to define and give a definition of what sexually molested means. Sexually molested does not mean rape. It doesn't mean that the actual intercourse happened. Sexually molested meaning the touching of the genital organs, but it is enough to mess you up. I'm grateful to God that I did not have to go through rape or the actual intercourse happening to me as a child, but even if it was just, if you will, molestation, it still messed me up. How do I know that it happened at such a young age? Unfortunately, I have no memories from that period of time. I don't have any good or bad memories, but we're going to talk in a later episode why that happens. But what I do have are flashbacks from that early age of the actual molesting episodes, if you will, happening. I know I have flashbacks. That's what I basically have. It stopped at the age of about 10 or 11 because I started saying no. Now, putting into context, I did not know that what was happening to me, and that's very common, not just to me, but generally, I didn't know that what was happening to me was bad. I had no, if you will, I didn't have any balance to put it against to know that it was bad, what was happening to me. But obviously, what I continue to say is that the conscience that God puts in us is activated, and at a certain age is matured enough to realize that something was not okay. And that was my case. At around the age of 10-11, I started realizing that what was happening to me was not okay, so I started saying no, and eventually the abuse stopped. Why didn't I tell anybody anything? Well, first of all, I do not know if the person told me not to say anything. I don't have any memories of that or recollection of that. I just don't know. Later in life, why didn't I say anything later in life? Up to probably about the age of 17, 18, quite late in my teenagerhood, I did not have words to describe what happened to me. It's as if you take this cup of coffee, if you will, and you show it to somebody in the jungle. They grew up in the jungle. And you ask them, what is this? Let's presume they speak English. They wouldn't know to say that it's a mug and then there's coffee inside or some brown liquid inside. They wouldn't know because they wouldn't have the vocabulary to describe this object because they never had it before. It was the same for me. I did not have the concept or the vocabulary to describe what happened to me until quite late in life or late in teenager years, when I realized that what happened to me was abuse, that it was molestation, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's why I didn't tell anything to anybody. Now also we are talking about a period in Romania where people just didn't talk about things like this. Sexual education did not happen, or at least not to this extent where you would talk about things like this. It just wouldn't happen. People, I suppose, I mean, obviously there were episodes of this happening around, but we just didn't have access to so much information. Everything that had to do with sexuality was kind of a taboo. And also I think people were just not expecting for these things to happen, especially to the pastor's daughter. I mean, we're not talking about a bad family or a family where people were drinking or anything like that. We were talking about the pastor who was living authentically a righteous life, and you wouldn't imagine that her daughter would go through something like this. But it happened, unfortunately. As I said, a long period of time I had no words to describe this. But then, eventually, obviously after the abuse stopped, I kind of just buried it in my past. There was at one point a beginning of the process of healing, because I had a forgiveness moment. We're going to talk about it next week, or in a few weeks' times, but it was just buried in my past. We move forward in my teenager years, where I developed a passion for God. I never doubted God. I always believed in God. I always believed that He's good, He's righteous, and I know that part of it is because of my parents' way of living, and because what they preached, they practiced at home, and that they just lived a very authentic life with God. So I never doubted that God is good, that God is love, that God has a plan for my life. So I began to be very passionate about God. I was talking to my colleagues about God. We actually had a very nice young people's group at church, and we'd just meet by ourselves and read from the Bible and study the Bible and discuss about relationships, all the questions we had as teenagers. How far is too far in a relationship? When you should have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and all these types of things. We were trying to filter all these questions through the Bible. We had a very nice group that we would meet with and just grow with God. During my teenager years, at one point, I entered in a relationship with a guy, and it was a friendship. It wasn't a matter of girlfriend, boyfriend, lover, or anything like that. It was purely friendship with the purpose of encouraging each other with growing with God. So it didn't involve anything from the era of love or so on. And this guy was the first person that I dared to tell him what happened to me as a child. I didn't call it abuse, but I explained what happened to me. The guy's reaction was now looking back, was quite indifferent in some ways, and that should have been a red flag for me. But this relationship, surely, not all of a sudden, over time and step by step, it became a very toxic relationship for me, ending up with a guy molesting me twice. So he hurt me where it hurt the most. So here I was at 18, feeling super broken, feeling trapped in this toxic relationship, and feeling like I was living not necessarily a double life, but a parallel life. On one side, I was very passionate about God, and one episode that happened, and I'll tell you in a second about, was happening in the same time as I was organizing youth meetings, and not just in our church, but regional youth meetings, so that people from towns and villages nearby would come and hear about God. So on one side, there was this part of my life where I would continue to be passionate about God, but then parallel to this was this toxic relationship that was killing me. I felt very broken and very trapped in this relationship. And although the physical part, the molestation happened only twice, the emotional, mental manipulation that happened really broke me. So I was in my last year of high school, getting ready for my final exams so that I could graduate and then go to the Bible college in the UK. I mean, my ticket, my airplane ticket was bought, my tuition for the year was paid, and I just found myself really trapped and really broken. I felt like I could not escape this relationship. So one day I went to the pharmacy in the town near to our village. I was already driving, and with a very happy face, because on the outside I was a very bubbly person. I was very open, very smiley, although I was dying on the inside. On the surface, it looked like everything was alright. So I went to the pharmacy and I asked the lady if she could give me something to sleep, because I was struggling to sleep because of my exams coming up, and nobody questioned anything because they knew who I was, because they knew my family, because I seemed alright, because I was passionate about God and I was talking everywhere to everybody about God. So nobody questioned anything, nobody doubted that something was happening on the inside. And I received something, I don't know what it was. Obviously it wasn't some strong sleeping pills because I did not have a prescription. But they gave me something, and then one evening after a fight, if I could put it like this, just as a parenthesis, the manipulation, the toxicity of a relationship doesn't have to always happen face to face. Even through a phone, if the person got a grip on the other person, on the victim, it can work. The toxicity can continue. So after a discussion one evening, I felt like I was literally losing my mind. I felt like I could not take it anymore. I could not see a way out. I felt like an animal in a cage, if you will, and out of desperation, I took a handful of pills, and I'm talking a big handful of those pills. I always say in my relationship with God, and now I'm going to say it publicly, that I was born 3 times. I was born when I was born almost 35 years ago. Then I was born again. I'll say it as my baptism, I put it as a pinpoint, when I was 15. And then the 3rd time I was born was that night, because the miraculous happened. And God did a miracle. And those pills had no effect on me. I could not sleep the whole night, although I took a full handful. And obviously I'm aware, as I said, that I did not get like some strong medication. But these days, if I take 2 pills of melatonin, natural melatonin, we have that around the house because sometimes insomnia and tiredness and so on. But if I take 2 of those pills, which is the maximum dosage, I sleep like deep until the morning. And I took a handful of something, and I had no side effects. I could not sleep the whole night, but also I had no side effects in the sense of stomach problems or anything. And it was my miracle from God, I suppose. He decided again to save my life. The morning after, I decided that suicide is never the answer, and is never the answer. And in case you who are listening to me are going through some horrible stuff, I'm sorry. First of all, I'm really sorry that you're going through those, but suicide is never the answer. Never, ever, ever. Suicide is never the answer. I'm going to put it bold and big right now on the screen and repeat it again. Suicide is never the solution. After this episode, I was still broken. Although the miraculous happened, I still felt lost. I was still in the toxic relationship. I still didn't know a way out. I just decided that suicide is never the solution. So I went to the UK, and this toxicity continued over a period of some part of my school, because there were phone calls, messages, emails. And but before I went to the Bible college, I made this prayer to God, and I said, God, as I said before, I never doubted God, but this was the only moment in my life where I doubted that God still knew I existed. I felt like as if I kind of maybe got out from under the radar of God, and God kind of forgot that I existed. So I made this prayer and I said, God, if you are still there, if you did not abandon me, please give me a sign. I am not a sign person. Never before nor since did I ever ask God for a sign. I always say, God, talk to me. But I never said, God, give me a sign, except that incident. I went to the Bible college, and God answered my prayer. God gave me Sam. Sam's full name is Samuel, and Samuel means God heard. And when I say that Sam is my Samuel, I mean it literally. God heard my prayer. Now, when I went to the Bible college, I went very much decided in my heart that I was never going to get married. Although these relationships of abuse was not of a boyfriend, was not of a love involved, I was like, I don't want. I was so done with it that I said, I don't want. I want to be unmarried, and me and God will see what we'll do. And Sam, on his side, he had just gotten baptized. He just decided to fully live for God, and he was like, I'm going to go to Bible school. I want to focus on God. I don't want girls. I don't want relationships. But God had a different idea, and we became friends, and I started talking to him, and basically Sam was the guy who walked with me through the hell that I was living, especially in the first year of IBTI, the Bible college where I went to. I was a very introverted girl. I used to cry a lot, and maybe like when they would ask me, are you okay? I'll just like brush it off. Yeah, I'm okay, just something happened, and not really give any explanation. But maybe now you understand, if you're watching this video and you were one of my colleagues, you understand why I was crying so much. I was basically going through hell. In some ways, the manipulation was quite stronger when I was there for a period of time. And I felt completely broken. I mean, Sam saw me in my worst of the worst. I used to wear very baggy clothes. I mean, I still wear oversized t-shirts and stuff, but now they're in fashion. Those days, it was just a choice, which is a very common choice for people that went through abuse. I used to write on my hands, ugly, hated, unloved, unworthy, things like that. Things that Sam would get to see some of the times that I was writing these things. It was just a way of, I felt that I needed to express somehow this pain, otherwise I felt like I was going to explode. So in some ways I can understand the people that are going through self-harming. It's just such a feeling of you're going to explode from this pain if you don't let it go out somehow. I just decided to do it through writing on my hands, and just really believing that about myself, and considering myself very unworthy and unloved and without value. So fast forward, I did get out of this toxic relationship. I ended the relationship. I had the courage, with Sam by my side and God by my side, to get out. Even though I was out physically, because I was in England, he was in Romania, I had the courage to end this relationship. And I consider my second year of IBTI a blooming season. It was as if I was a flower that was, very much covered by thorns and weeds. And then because this toxicity ended, it was like I finally got the sun, and I started to bloom. So to all my teachers and colleagues that are watching these videos, if you look back at that time and you try to remember, probably you would be able to confirm that it was like that. The first year I was so closed in, so broken, many times crying in the chapel and just like going through hell. And then in the second year I was just like blooming. That's the word I can describe it. There is hope, guys. Today, obviously, I'm a restored person. I'm Alex that you see and maybe got to know. And it's all because of God. Obviously, it was a long process. It didn't happen overnight. I had to work through some pretty painful things. But they got me where I am today. And today I'm a healed and restored person. It took time, but time does not heal. God heals. Time, what it does, it only deepens the wound, and the person still has symptoms, but just might not know where it comes from. That's why you have 60, 70, 80 years old people with symptoms of the trauma they went to, a trauma that they never healed from. But there is healing, and there is hope. And God can't wait to walk with you through all this healing process. In the future weeks, we're going to talk about forgiveness, healing, boundaries, And I do not pretend that I know the questions to everything. I just purely choose to show you my scars and maybe somehow be a guidance for you through your process, just by telling you how I managed and how I journeyed this process. I know that my story is not as rare as we might believe. The statistics are pretty dark. I didn't watch yet. I want to watch The Sound of Freedom, the film that just came out this summer, where it talks about child trafficking, but the statistics are pretty dark. I mean, I'm gonna read you some statistics. They are from the US, but I'm pretty sure that Romania and Europe are nowhere lower than that. And the statistics says that in America, in the US, every 68 seconds, a person is sexually assaulted. Every 9 minutes, the victim is a child. 1 in 6 women were a victim of an attempt to rape, and 1 in 33 men were a victim of an attempted rape. The statistics are really dark. The world we live in is a really fallen and dark world, but there is hope. God heals today. He still restores. He redeems. And in the weeks that follow, I hope that your hope is going to grow. I hope that you're going to choose to walk with me through this process. And God can take the ugliest scars and turn them into the most beautiful stars. He can take the worst and the ashes, if you will, of your life. Because maybe in your case, it was not abuse. Maybe you went through a divorce. Maybe you went through other traumas. It doesn't necessarily have to be abuse. But God has a plan for your life. God can bring restoration. And God can bring beauty out of the ugliest ashes. Every scar tells a story. The scars that I showed you today tell my stories. Christ already showed us his scars. Remember I was thinking one time during communion about the episode where Jesus showed his scars to Thomas. And I was thinking, I was like, God, did you choose to keep your scars after resurrection just for Thomas? I mean, Jesus could have been resurrected with perfectly unscarred skin, if you will. But if you read the Bible, after the resurrection, Jesus still had his scars on his arms and legs and on his side where the sword went. And I wonder many times why. And I think for me as well, he chose to leave his scars on so that I would have the courage to show you my scars. Jesus' scars tell the story of salvation, of restoration, of redemption. Jesus' scars talks about the Father's love. He loved us so much that he gave his only son. He left his scars so we would have the courage to show ours. Come with me. Walk this journey of God transforming your wounds into scars, and then your scars shining bright in stars and shining of his glory and of his love. Have the courage, come with me. Thank you so much for staying until the end. I hope that my story, besides shocking you if you know me, pass over the shock, but I hope that it moves your eyes towards God and it shows you the amazing God that we have. Thank you for staying until the end, although it was a longer video. I hope I will see you next week again. Don't forget to subscribe, like, hit the bell button. If the commentaries are working, because I had issues with them and YouTube turned them off, I don't know why. I know other YouTubers that had this issue, but if they work, I would love to hear your feedback. If not, I will always be on Instagram and Facebook. I'm going to leave the links down below. Come on, give me a feedback. I would love to hear maybe your story, if you're willing to share it, or what you think about what I shared today. I'd just love to hear from you guys, and I hope I will see you next week. Be blessed and be encouraged. this journey of 10 weeks, I hope it will be, and I pray that it will be, a journey of hope, healing, and restoration. See you next time, guys. Bye.